I was a counselor at Camp Tallwood. Here's the story of those who never left. I'm still shaken by what happened. Still have nightmares. The woods terrify me now. My blood freezes in my veins and I stop breathing. And I'll never swim in a lake again. Even pools give me trouble. I see things in the reflections. Everything started out okay. Camp Tallwood was beautiful. The air was clean and fresh. And the trees were tall and lovely. Especially when the leaves changed. The forest was on fire. And the lake was pristine. Calm. Cool. Not quite clear waters. So still. If you've ever visited rural Vermont, you know what I'm talking about. I was so excited to work there. I could never afford to go there as a child. But I could be a counselor once I turned 17. And the pay was wonderful. Now I know why. I loved being a counselor. The kids were great and my coworkers were fun. I've never been that close to a group of people before or since. And Camp Tallwood was so breathtakingly beautiful. I never wanted to leave. What scares me is I almost didn't. And sometimes I feel as if I never really have. It haunts me. I can't tell anyone what really happened because they wouldn't believe me. But this is a place where I can tell my story. A place where I think people will keep open minds and understand. So here goes nothing. I arrived at Camp Tallwood the second to last week of April. Vermont is kind of brown at that time of year. With the snow gone. The flowers still dead. And the trees not yet crowned in their lush green glory. But I was still charmed by the landscape. It held a sort of haunting, Gothic beauty. And it sucked me in. The camp itself is quite old. Almost frozen in time with the quaint little antique cabins spaced among the tall, old-growth trees. Girls at the top of the hill. Boys at the bottom. The mess hall had appliances from the 50s that were still kicking. The ovens and microwaves were updated. But the toasters and the refrigerator remained. Accentuated by lofty ceilings and rows of hardwood benches worn smooth by generations of kids. And glossy oak tables. The bunks in the cabins were also antiques. A little creaky. But ornate and lovely just the same. Thankfully the mattresses and cotton sheets were soft and brand new. The cabins themselves dated back to the early 1900s. With smooth pine walls. Small brass doorknobs and keyholes and thick paned windows that added to the charm. I fell out of time and into the camp's soporific beauty. We all got there 2 weeks early for training and team building. We learned how to keep track of kids. How to comfort the little ones who were homesick. Some of us learned specialties. Like archery, swimming, outdoorsman education, or horseback riding. And we all learned how to be lifeguards. Miss Melissa, the woman who ran the camp, was very particular about the lake and water safety. We figured she was just passionate about keeping the kids safe. I should have known something was off. Though, some of the rules were strange. Like no camping in the woods. And no hiking after sunset. Campfires were permitted. But only in the fire pit nestled in the center of the cabins. A safe distance from the swallowing darkness of the dense forest. And going to the lake at night was strictly forbidden. We were told that if we were caught doing any of these things, we'd be packing our bags and going home. Again, we figured she was a bit of a safety nut. Never considered that she was protecting all of us. With good reason. She also forbade food outside of the mess hall unless it was s'mores night. And even then we had to pick up every crumb. Raccoons, she said. Insufferable pests. They broke into the mess hall once and it was a disaster. At least we thought it was the raccoons. There were 8 of us there for the summer. And we didn't question why there were only a handful of employees. Why there were no returning counselors or Vermont natives. Wendy, Sedona, Ty, Sarah, Connor, Talia, Franklin, and me, Emily. The first night there was good. Actually, the whole first week was great. We had bonfires every night and spent our days on the lake and at the stables and in the mess hall. Learning to canoe and ride horses and make huge batches scrambled eggs. We went on hikes through the quiet, green forest of old-growth hardwoods. Miss Melissa said the area was never logged. It was beautiful. Serene. Perfect. I'd never felt so happy and at peace. It was around the second week that things started to get a little strange. The trees felt like they were watching us. At night, the dark spaces between the trunks seemed to grow. And the lake's stillness began to creep beneath my skin. Something just felt off. But always with the morning light those thoughts were whisked away like cobwebs. Besides, It's hard to think about much at 6 am. I was never a morning person before Camp Tallwood. And now I can't sleep. The first thing that really spooked all of us was the last trip we took onto the lake before the campers came. We were 2 to a canoe. Except Heather, who had to be in her own. Heather. I forgot about her. She didn't last very long. I didn't dislike her. But she wasn't exactly the kind of person I usually get along with. Anyway, we were out on the lake, with the cool mist rising and bird calls echoing eerily through the slowly warming air. And even in the weak early morning rays, Heather's skin glowed and her hair threw fire back at the Sunday she sparkled, splashing all the boys and giggling and screaming with laughter when they pretended to tip her canoe. I rolled my eyes. Sedona, who, to my surprise, wanted to ride with me, did the same. Franklin and Sarah were talking about a book they had both read, while Wendy and Talia were their bubbly selves, trying to get everyone in on everything. If it wasn't for Connor and Ty, I think Heather would have been okay. Maybe we'd have become friends. As it were, we'd been out for about 2 hours and were about to head back for lunch when Connor and Ty started acting stupid again. Ty was okay. He was pretty cute, actually. But Connor was just obnoxious. He was drooling all over Heather. I couldn't blame him. And decided it would be a good idea to flip her canoe. Heather wasn't wearing a life jacket, even though Miss Melissa would have freaked if she knew any of us took them off. But she was a surfer. A little New England lake had nothing on West Coast waves. Right? It started with Heather flicking water at them with her paddle. So they splashed over and flipped her. Heather, shrieking, plunged into the cold, murky green water. And then she didn't come up. She flipped into the water as her canoe capsized. And then, nothing. No splashes. No bubbles. Just the weathered red canoe shining cherry bright as it bobbed gently. We all froze. The lake's surface was still as death. As we waited for her to pop up laughing, brushing wet golden locks from her perfect face. She'd been under the water for far too long. Heather! Shouted Connor. This isn't funny. As if she could hear him. What the duck, said Ty. She was right here. She was. Right here. His black hair fell across his eyes. They were filled with fear. We all sat there for a moment, stunned, staring at the lake's still surface. Duck, Sedona said. We have to find her. The water's cold. Maybe it shocked her. And with that, Sedona took off her shirt and dove in. She came up for air and went down again. And again. And again. No sign of Heather. We all jumped in. Then, shocked out of our state of immobility. The water of the lake was cold, and the air rushed out of me as I connected with it. Engulfed in chilly, blue-green darkness. I was disoriented for a moment before I remembered. Heather. We have to find Heather. We didn't find Heather. We looked and looked and looked until the numbness left and returned again. That particular feeling of having spent too long in cold water. I felt myself growing tired and my limbs and head became heavy. We towed the canoes to shore to scramble back in. Then, sodden and shaken, the sun now hiding behind a thick cover of clouds, we paddled back in silence. Miss Melissa was livid. But she fumed silently, seeming more scared than anything else. She said she'd call the fire department, and told the rest of us to get inside and get warm. I was shocked we weren't all fired. But then again, the campers would be here in 2 days. The bonfire that night was quiet. The only sounds being crackling logs and the wind hush-hushing though the trees. We all huddled together, guilty, scared, when we heard another sound. Wet, heavy footsteps coming from the lake. And they were getting closer and closer. And Heather, dripping wet, absolutely soaked to the bone. She appeared out of the solid darkness into our little ring of firelight. Her teeth were chattering and she was shaking like a leaf in a hurricane. Why didn't you guys tell me it was time for the campfire? She rasped. Then she collapsed. She was laid out in the infirmary, scarcely breathing. Like the Ophelia of Lure Lake. Tendrils of lakeweed tangled in and flowed through her messy blonde curls. Her feet were caked in lake mud. It was under toenails and in her hair and was smeared across her face in tattered Lululemon-like war paint. But her fingernails were missing. Perfect baby blue manicure replaced by wells of bloody flesh. Raw as a bitten plum. Melissa tried to hide the bloody claw marks on her back and on her arms and the purple-black bruises on her neck. But we saw. They were strangely human. And it chilled me to the bone. Melissa never called the paramedics. The nurse in the infirmary had all kinds of equipment I knew nothing about. Amanda was her name. And she was an experienced right now who worked in the emergency room in town during the off-season. Melissa only wanted the best taking care of her kids. The other nurse, Katie, stood by allied. We were scared. And suspicious. So we tried to call 911. But our phones didn't work. And the nearest one besides the rotary telephone Melissa kept locked in her office was miles and miles away in the nearest town. We didn't have cars. There was quite literally no way out until the end of the summer. That's when we realized that we were trapped. The kids came and the darkness seemed to lift a little. To back off with so much life there. Heather recovered surprisingly quickly. And seemed to be mostly herself. But when the night fell. And the shadows closed in. She withdrew. Became distant. Like no one was home behind her pretty cerulean eyes. And any time we tried to question her about what happened. To ask her what she saw. She withered. Like the petals of a moonflower at sunrise. And wouldn't be herself for the rest of the evening. So we backed off and tried to distract her as much as possible. But she only stayed a week after that. Telling us she would totally stay in touch and miss us so much. Because she had a dream offer to rep a surf brand back in Cali. We believed her when we saw the letter her mom sent. I haven't spoken to Heather since. But I've seen her living her golden life on Instagram. Looking like a Quicksilver version of Dove Cameron with a surfer's tan. I hope she's okay. The kids were amazing. And I saw a different side of Melissa. She was so warm and caring and fun. She taught the campers songs and took us on hikes and adventures to catch bugs and birdwatch. And was the best storyteller on s'mores nights. But she never went to the lake. And she never went too deep into the forest. We did. Though. The kids gave us nicknames. I was Freckles because I have a boundless constellation of freckles all over my pale skin. Perks of being a redhead. I guess. Wendy was Peps and Talia was Bunny because of their infectious, spontaneous, and all-around sunshine personalities. I always felt bright around them. Franklin was Bookie because he always had his nose in a book. I really liked that about him. Sarah was quirky. And a little moody. Brooding at times. So the kids dubbed her Raven despite her dishwater hair. Ty was gorgeous with his black silky hair and deep brown eyes. His nickname was Friday. Sedona was an indie girl from Sedona, Arizona. So she was called Arizona Zona or Ari for short. She was my best friend that summer. She was so amazing. And down to earth. And witty and fun. She said our auras clicked or something like that. Connor, on the other hand, was a total frat boy in the making. Cute. But not that cute. And full of himself. For example. He named himself Falcon. Couldn't tell you how it stuck. But he was weirdly good with the kids. Again. The first 2 weeks were golden. The kids stayed for either 1 or 2 weeks. Depending on the age group. And we had the best time. It got a little tiring sometimes. But it was worth it. Peps and Bunny were great with the little ones 7-10. And Ari, Falcon, Bookie, and I tended to float between the older and the younger ones. Raven and Friday were perfect for the older kids 11-14. If there was drama, Raven solved it. Friday nixed any bullying. And if there were any homesick little ones, Bunny and Peps were on it. Ari, Connor Falcon. I guess, but his nickname was so dumb. Bookie and I led more specific group activities and were there for more general moral support and fun. Ari did horseback riding, her skater girl Crystal obsessed cowgirl vibes were truly immaculate. And Connor did archery for the 11-14s and various outside games with the 7-10s. Bookie knew everything about the flowers and trees and insects. So he took the kids on trips to find bugs and sketch rare flowers and identify trees by their leaves. I got over my fear of the lake and taught swimming. And I loved it. No morning was complete without Pep's gap-toothed grin or Bunny's bouncing step that made her puffball space buns bounce with her. Raven wasn't to be spoken to until she had her coffee. And Bookie was up before everyone else, reading anything from comic books to prose to astrophysics in the blue dawn before all heck broke loose. The steam that rose from his mug of green tea catching the golden light of the rising Sunday. If I had to describe him briefly, it would be honey and Earl Grey. With a touch of lavender. Connor, I mean Falcon and Friday, lacked his sophistication. I can still hear Falcon's morning thunder piss. Like a goddamn racehorse. When we went to meet them before the kids woke up to make a plan for the day. Friday would waltz out of the shower. Sometimes sans shirt. Body glistening. I know what it's like to be objectified by another's unwelcome gaze. So I always looked away after the initial shock. Brushing his dripping ink black hair from his perfect skin. Lovely like oversteeped English breakfast tea. Ari was awake and not at the same time. Messy bun and cute pajamas and impossibly fresh skin. She would playfully flirt with the boys sometimes. Then remind them they were mostly barking up the wrong tree. I was half in love with her. I'd sip coffee with Raven. Hers black over ice and mine warm and mostly cream and sugar. Too much coffee gave me the jitters. Get yourself together. Freckles. Was my resounding morning mood. We enjoyed each other's company in the brief peace before the kids woke up. June was fantastic. We had a great time with the kids all day. Signing camp songs and playing games. Snacks were goldfish and fruit punch and watermelon. And lunch was always good. Mostly sandwiches and lemonade. Nights were cool. So the warm dinners were where it was at. Pizza. Mashed potatoes and carrots with that weird but delicious lunch meat textured turkey you only seem to get at school lunches. Shepherd's pie. Soup and grilled cheese. Dessert was fun. Either sherbet or brownies or Rice Krispies. Sometimes cupcakes or sundaes. I digress. But I feel I do Tallwood and the people there a disservice if I didn't note the good times. 2. We had a campfire every night. And did s'mores twice a week and roasted hot dogs sometimes. We'd sing songs and tell just spooky enough stories. Huddled around the warmth. With the stars sparkling overhead. There's something about a bonfire with the woods all around and the vast night sky above that makes everything more exciting. I was intoxicated by the fresh night air that hailed from the trees and the supernova of silver stars above. I could tell the kids were having a great time. It was around the last week of June that things started to get a little strange. Sometimes I swear I heard footsteps in the cabin when I was the only one there. And we would occasionally hear knocking on the doors and windows at night. The kids were scared. So we told them it was the other cabins playing a prank. Even though deep down, we knew nobody was there. There was something prowling. An uneasiness in the backs of our minds. A prickling on the back of our necks that we so stupidly wrote off until it was too late. Things got bad in July. It started with the laughter in the woods. We had to have our campfires earlier and earlier each night. We'd hear wild laughter echoing off the trees in the darkness. Sometimes close. Sometimes far away. I swear I saw firelight flickering in the distance. One night, the head cook, a kind, older lady called Midge, joined us by the fire after the kids were in bed. And told us some stories that scared the living shit out of us. I bet you're wondering what stalks the woods at night. What wanders among the trees. Always watching. She began. With a crooked grin. The firelight making her soft grandmother face all strange. Sharp angles. Eerie. I shivered a little. And it wasn't because of the cool night air. We were still as death. Nobody knows for sure. Some say witches. Some say the spirits of the forests are angry. Some say it's the ghosts of all the people who have died here. Angry. Can't move on. That's what I think. She said. Nodding her head. The soil is rich with blood. The land is twisted. Cursed. Midge continued. Her voice hushed so we had to lean in close to hear. This land is much older than any of us. And belongs to the people your ancestors stole it from. Connor rolled his eyes and scoffed. Midge's face changed. Darkened. And her eyes glittered fiercely. Watch what you say. Boy. Those were my people. We didn't put the evil here. It came after we left, so do not blame my people for the folly of the colonizers. What about the witches? Asked Raven. Her interest piqued. I am fairly certain I'd seen black candles in her bag. But I am not one to snoop. No. I don't blame the witches. Either. They didn't curse the land. That's hogwash. The men who hanged them soiled the land. The universe gives back what it takes. And it was the English who soaked the evil into this ground with their wars and their slaughter. She sat there, staring into the flames, absent-mindedly puffing on her cigarette. Well, good night, kids. She chirped, and strolled off to her cozy bed in a little house off the main lodge. Wait. Bookie called. Midge turned, smiling serenely. What? Dearie? She asked. You've got to tell us more. I mean, this camp is at least 100 years old. You've got to know loads about it. Bookie inquired. Midge turned back and settled herself with us by the fire. And lit another cigarette. Don't say I didn't warn you. Dearies. She said with a grin. The firelight playing eerily off of her usually soft features. Camp Tallwood has lots of ghost stories. Yes. Lots of death. People still hear the witches of the wood. Whispering in their language. Wild laughter ringing through the trees. Some even see bonfires flickering. And shadowy female forms dancing around them. I shuddered. I'd seen the fires and heard the laughter. Never approach them. Children. She said softly. Or I fear you may never return. They say the hanged women who somehow still walk the earth will curse you to wander the woods with them forever. A shadowy haunt. Forever trapped among the trees. Another shiver ran through us. You must never enter the woods at night. No matter what you hear. Be it cries or screams or sobbing. The thing of the wood is only trying to lure you in. We sat there. Owl-eyed. You're just ducking with us. Scoffed Connor. Hush. Boy. She said. Curling her lip. I haven't even told you about the lake yet. And she got up and stalked off into the darkness without another word. What the actual duck? Said Arizona. We have to learn more about this place. Raven insisted. There's something really wrong here. I said it's just this feeling I have. Like I'm always being watched or something. Really, Freckles? Said Connor. Rolling his eyes. Bunny's eyes were wide. No. She said softly. Her voice is so hushed I barely heard her over the crackle of the logs. I keep hearing these strange things. And. She trailed off. What kind of things? Bunny? Peps asked gently. Bunny shook her head. Her dark eyes frightened. It's just. I've seen someone. Something. Peeking from behind the trees. At dusk. When the light is purple and starts to get low. It's like it's playing some kind of game. When I see it. It jumps back behind the tree. Too fast to be human. I almost feel like it's teasing me. Bunny was close to tears. Friday put his arm around her and she leaned into him. Connor started creeping towards Ari. She scooted away in disgust and laced her arm through mine. Her gray eyes were liquid in the light of the stars. Stay on planet Earth. Please. Emily. I thought. She winked at me and smiled. I smiled back. That left Peps and Bookie and Raven. Connor wasn't cool enough for Peps. With her pink hair and NYU art girl vibes. And Raven wouldn't touch him with a 60-foot pole. And although Bookie was in the stratosphere and Connor was in the Mariana Trench. He sometimes stole secret glances at Connor's vaguely attractive adjacent face. It looked better in the shadows when you couldn't quite see all of the details. Or maybe it was certain aspects of his personality that ruined it for me. Again. I digress. That night. Though. Connor pulled out a bottle of Jack that he'd been saving. Y'all are way too on edge. He said. Let this Tennessee honey blow off some steam. So we did. We passed around the bottle. Laughing. Saying things we shouldn't have that would fade with the morning light. Friday and Bunny started to make out all sloppy tipsy as the fire burned low and they thought we couldn't see them. Until Connor whooped and brought them back. Bunny giggled. Embarrassed. But also giddy because. Well. Friday. And Ari. Sedona. I loved to say her pretty name. She leaned her head on me and I tried not to act like it rushed straight to my head like a shot of whiskey. Her soft skin had the faint scent of pears. And her hair smelled like the smoke of the campfire. She smiled up at me and I smiled back. Her eyes were silver. Her lips were. Not yet. She whispered in my ear. Sending shivers. Duck. Then we heard the screaming from the woods. It was blood-curdling. We sprinted as fast as we could. Weaving back and forth from the jack. Duck 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 duck. I said. Vision blurry. Tripping over rocks and sticks. We stumbled into the woods. Blindly. Following the screaming. I felt waves of sickening terror wash over me. I was certain that in our moment of negligence. Something awful had happened to one of the kids. And I threw up on myself. Chunks of half-digested turkey and the acrid sting of cheap fermented rye burning in my throat. But I kept. Running. And running. And running. The screaming grew shriller. More desperate. And I barely registered the brambles slicing my shins and the branches slapping my cheeks. I was completely swallowed by blind panic and the tangible darkness of sockets between the hardwoods. But then the screaming stopped. And there was no one there. We were completely alone in the dark. Silent woods. There was nothing. No crickets. No night birds. No rustling leaves. Total silence. It was eerie. And it was so dark. Like the moon didn't shine there. I know where we are, said Bookie. I recognize that tree. We're not that deep into the woods. Follow me. He was quiet, but calm and confident. So we began to cautiously follow him back to the cabins. Then we heard the footsteps. We froze and huddled together. I was too terrified to care about Connor's hand on my ass. Then they got faster. Closer. We started sprinting after Bookie. Dodging this way and that among the huge trees. Don't look behind you, shouted Bookie. Just keep going. We're almost there. But Bunny did. And let out a curdling shriek. Then she tripped. Friday swooped her up. And they kept running. Friday whisking her along behind him. I looked back, too. And froze. There. Behind us. Was that thing. Peeking out from behind the trees. Moving impossibly fast. It was nothing more than a shadow. Vaguely humanoid. Except the arms were far too long. And the legs were cocked at a strange angle. Like a goat walking on its hind legs. And then it disappeared. Ari bumped into me and almost knocked both of us over. Shit. Freckles. Run. I snapped out of it as the footsteps surrounded us and grew closer. I couldn't breathe. My chest was too tight. And my heart fluttered in the pit of my stomach. Whatever it was sounded big. And the cadence of the footsteps was a little off. Awkward. Like perhaps one of its legs was clubbed or too short. I didn't particularly care to find out. Just as I thought I was about to take my last breath. We broke through the trees and I fell crying onto the grass. It was wet with glistening dew. The footsteps abruptly stopped. And the crickets and soft crackling of leaves from the forest recommenced. As if nothing had happened. I could breathe again. I began to do a head count. Ari was bent over, puking. So was Peps. Connor was there. And so was Friday. His arms around Bunny. Bookie stood with a quizzical look on his face. Trying to make sense of what the duck just happened. And Raven wasn't there. The others were too busy catching their breaths to notice. Guys, where's Raven? I yelled. The sickening waves of panic returning. The world started spinning and I fought the urge to throw up again. Oh duck. Oh duck duck duck. Friday groaned. No way in hell am I going back in there. Yelled Connor. Connor. You a hole. Shouted Peps. We don't ducking need him. Spat Ari. Come on. Connor. She'd do the same for your sorry chicken shit ass. I snapped. My tone shocked me. Well ducking come on. Bookie shouted. I'd never heard him that loud or distressed. And so with my heart in my mouth. I ran back into the trees. But it wasn't quiet this time. There was a veritable symphony of crickets. And a soft, inviting breeze that rustled the silver-dusted leaves in a calming sort of way. The whippoorwills called. Small mammals rustled through the underbrush. Raven. We called. Shattering the now peaceful forest. Ravine. I screamed. Her name until I was hoarse. The sun began to rise. The kids. Began Friday. I know. Bookie said. We have to go back. No. Yelled Ari. I am not leaving her. Ari. Love. We have to. Said Peps gingerly. Raven is tough. She'll be okay. We have to take care of the kids. Bunny was quiet. Tears silently streaming down her dark pixie face. So we trudged back. Beyond bone tired. Defeated. I'll start some coffee. I said. Bunny burst into tears. Shh, hun. It's gonna be okay. It's gonna be okay. Said Friday. Peps gave her a hug. We dropped the boys off and started trudging up the hill to our cabin. Then we stopped dead in our tracks. The door was swinging wide open. And a trail of sticks and leaves and dirty footprints led into the cabin. Bunny screamed. And we all went sprinting into the cabin. Breathless. My eyes followed the trail leading into the soft blue darkness within. I'll check the right. You check the left. I said to Ari. Bunny and I started Peps. And then she just stopped. Staring at Raven's bed. There she was. On top of The covers. Sound asleep. The dirt trail led right to her bed. And she was covered in it. Her hair full of sticks and leaves. Her limbs all scratched up from branches and brambles. Bunny tentatively approached her. Raven. She coaxed. Gently shaking her arm. Strangely, Raven's eyes flew open. Normally it took Pep's 2 cups of coffee and lots of annoying music blasted through earbuds to wake her up. What the duck? Raven said. Why am I covered in dirt? Was this a prank? I am going to kill all of you. I bet it was ducking Connor. You mean you really don't remember? Asked Pep softly. Remember what? She? Snapped you dickholes rolling me around in the leaves while I was asleep. No, I started. But just then the girls started waking up. Ari shoved her into the shower. Hissing quick. Hop in. Don't let the kids see you, I'll explain. The girls saw the mess. Of course. But we told them it was the boys playing a prank. And we'd get them later. Peps gathered the girls. I swept. And Bunny changed the sheets while Ari filled Raven in. It was all out of sight. Out of mind by the time Melissa met up with us. She eyed us. Taking in our unusually messy appearances. Slowed mannerisms. And purpled eyes. All of you have been working so hard this summer with hardly any time off. She began. She was right. Of course. The few days of downtime between waves of campers was spent here. At Tallwood. It was on those days that we hiked farther. Swam longer. And rode around bareback. Laughing and forgetting everything but the present moment. Tallwood had that kind of effect. I miss them. All of them. All of it. Sorry. I keep getting distracted. Why don't we have a chill day today? You all take the kids to the lake to splash around. We'll do ice cream sundaes and lunch by the lake. And afterwards Midge and Katie and Amanda and I will look after the kids while they watch a movie. And you lot can get some rest. She started to walk away and then turned on her heel. And I know you're tired. But whatever you do, don't take your eyes off of those kids. The lake is dangerous. She said severely. We know, Miss Melissa. Connor broke in. The lake is deep and cold. Much colder than you think. And no one truly knows the depth, he said. Making his voice much spookier than hers. We all had Melissa's lake speech memorized by now. And whatever you do let the kids swim past the rope. Again, no kids past the rope. And no swimming without life jackets unless they excelled at the swim test. Connor continued in the same ridiculous tone. I'm serious. Young man. She snapped. If looks could kill, Connor would be 6 feet under. Don't worry, Miss Melissa. We'll watch them like hawks. Plus Freckles is a great swim instructor, the kids will be fine. Trilled Bunny. Back to her usual bright self in front of Melissa. Thank you, Bunny. She smiled. We each had 2 cups or more of coffee coursing through our veins. But they weren't quite as jumpy as me. I was on edge and couldn't seem to shake the feeling that something awful was going to happen. Like someone was going to die. But I tried to smile and shake it off and be cheerful for the kids. After getting everyone into their swimsuits, we rounded up the kids and headed to the lake. When we got close, they started to run towards the water. And the dock out of excitement. Hey, hey, hey. We called. And caught them before they could leap in without us. I lined the littles up and put most of them, complaining, into life jackets. The 11-14s were all strong swimmers, so I wasn't too worried. Then we turned them loose. Let's take turns guarding. I said. I was a lifeguard back home. And I knew what it was like to sit and stand all day. We'll switch every 30 minutes. Okay. So no one gets too tired. I'll start. Sounds good. Chirped Bunny. Okay. Said Peps. Don't fall asleep. Freckles. Taunted Connor. Friday winked at me. Bookie shook his head at them. And Ari had already run ahead of everyone and dove gracefully into the still water, barely making a ripple on its glassy surface. Oh my God. It's freezing. She screeched, making the kids laugh. The first half hour was really fun. The kids splashed, and Bookie read at the foot of my stand. Friday and Connor dunked the kids and raced around, laughing. Raven chilled in the shade, floating with some of the older kids. And Bunny and Peps had a game of Marco Polo going in the shallows. It was almost like nothing had happened. Get in. Freckles. A little boy called Jack cried. Yeah. Come on Freckles please. The 7-10s begged. Splashing me. I laughed. Don't worry. I'll dunk all of you later. But I gotta keep you safe. I told them. I sat up straight on stand. Constantly and systematically searching the water. Just like I did back home. I knew how quickly and quietly drowning could happen. Especially in open water where there were hidden currents and you can't see the bottom. That's why Melissa usually had me guard. It was another fun, relatively uneventful day on the lake. Until Connor got on stand. After me was Bookie. And then Peps. They were both good. Scanning and keeping an eye on all the kids. Especially the littles. And I swam around with Bunny and Ari and Friday. Dunking the kids as they hung on our backs. And played Marco Polo and the colors game. The lake was warm at the top and got significantly colder the deeper you went. It was only about 12 feet deep at the deepest point of the roped-off swimming area. And some of the older kids liked to dive down and grab shells and lake mud to throw at us and each other. Then it was lunchtime. And all the kids scrambled to the picnic area too. Dry off and then lined up for sundaes. The air warmed my chilled body and I basked in the sun slathered in SPF. Of course. I fry like a potato. It was the perfect day to have ice cream before lunch. Chocolate syrup and cherries seemed to wash away our fear. Even Raven was smiling. Then Connor got on stand. He brushed me off when I warned him about the after-lunch wall of tired you hit in the hot Sunday. I know he thought I was a royal stick in the mud. Specifically with the stick up my ass. But now I know why Melissa only ever had him watch me teach swimming. In the mid-mornings. He started off leaning back in his chair and twirling his whistle. Royally pissing me off as he tried and failed to get Ari's attention as she took a break and tanned on the dock. Bookie and I were playing duck duck goose in the shallows. While Bunny and Friday were watching a swimming contest at the deep end. Raven sat with her feet in the water. Talking to Ari. And Peps was judging a jumping contest. It was just another sunny day on the lake. And in my false sense of sunshine security, I thought about how happy I was to be there. During the day. At least. But happy nonetheless. After everyone was all changed and dried off. We got them settled in the lodge with pillows and blankets and snacks to watch their movie. We were about to head back for a much needed nap when Melissa asked if we'd done a head count. Duck. My blood ran colder than the lake water. We didn't do a head count after we got out. We did one after lunch. Stammered Peps. There were 26 kids total. 14 littles. And 12 of the 11 14s. Everyone was there. I know you did one after lunch. I'm asking if you did one after. Everyone got out. Melissa's eyes narrowed. We were all silent. Not daring to meet her fierce gaze. Melissa flew into the hall and did a head count. 25. I need you to do a roll call right now. She hissed at us. So Bunny called the names of the 710s. Everyone was there. Friday did the 11 14s. All 12 11 14s answered when their names were called. Only 13 of the littles replied. We did the call twice more. Did a head count. 25 total. 13 littles. 13 7-year-old John Michael didn't answer.